class, this is what we're going to be aiming for. So we're going to be doing a skirt with a facing. So we did facings like last week, right? And so this is where we're actually going to be putting it into use. Don't worry about the facing right now, just make sure that you do have it cut out. Right now, what we're going to just do is do our darts and our side seams. Very simple and really based on what we know already. You should be able to do that yourself, but that's what I want you to do for next week. So just make sure you have your facings and your interfacings for your facings cut out. You can iron them on if you want to, but I'll go over that again next class. So we have, we're going to have 3 pieces that we're going to need to sew for this. So one of them is going to be your front piece. Remember, that's on the fold. So there's one piece, even though there's two halves to the front, it's one piece. And then we have 2 separate pieces for the back. Each of these should be marked with your dart. Make sure that your back piece is mirrored, okay? If you accidentally get these confused and you mark the dart on the same side and you sew them together, that way one of your darts is going to be on the inside and one's going to be on the outside. We want all of the darts excess to be on the inside. So for the darts, just like the darts that we did for our samples, the waist darts, we're going to pick up the dart from the tip and the legs and we're going to fold it in half, and then we're going to start at the top of the dart where the legs are, where they go off the edge, and we're going to pin in and make sure that that pin tip goes through both sides of the line, and we're going to pin at the top and the bottom, again making sure it goes through all those legs, and you can pin in the center too for these longer darts. Okay, just like our sample, we're going to start at the tip. And you want to make sure that that needle goes in right at the tip. I think everybody, your darts looked fine. Don't backstitch, and you're just going to start sewing and make sure you sew on that line. And then you will backstitch at the where you end your dart at the leg. And you can double check how well you've landed on that line by checking on the other side. And mine seems fine, so I'm going to leave that. If it doesn't, if you miss the line by a lot, you don't have to worry about a little bit. But if you miss it by a lot, you can always take out that area and redo it. So one good thing about sewing is that it's very, you can fix your mistakes if you make mistakes. Again, same thing, this is the other back dart. Fold it in half, match my legs. Start at the very tip. So when you're sewing together a garment, usually one of the first things you're going to do is do your darts. Okay, they end up folding a certain way, and you're going to want them to be finished before you start putting the rest of your skirt together, because otherwise you can forget them. So something I want you guys to, as we're doing this skirt, to keep just a little bit of a note in your notebook or whatever of the steps it takes to make a skirt. So the first step would be, and you don't have to list cutting things out, but the first step would be to sew your darts. And you are going to sew your darts before you do any stay stitching. We are going to do some stay stitching on this, and I'm going to show you that next. But first I want to finish doing all my darts. So now we're going to do the 2 front darts. And if you prefer, you can go ahead and pin all your darts first before you sew, if that's easier for you. Sometimes when you get into a flow with the sewing, you can create like a system for yourself, kind of like a factory system, that if you do all of your pinning at once and then all your sewing at once, it can make it a little bit more efficient. It's up to you. That's not like a rule at all. It's personal preference of how you like to put things together. Some people like to do everything one step at a time. I tend to like to lump my jobs together so that I get all the same action over with in one fell swoop. And again, if you're having trouble getting those legs to line up, just kind of roll that dart under your fingers. And when you're listing the steps for the skirt, you don't have to, write down every little thing like fold your dart. Just, when we're talking about steps, we're going to assume that that is known. So you can just say sew darts. I already pinned my other one, I'm ready to go. So right away. So again, you should have 4 darts total. If you have less than that, you're missing something. You didn't mark something on your pattern or whatnot. I'm then gonna go press my darts. Can anybody tell me which way I press my darts? Good, thank you. Right back.
I'm like, the empty, right?
Okay, and so now I'm going to do stay stitching on my waistline. So again, this is the front of my skirt, and so this top part is where it's going to be my waist. And so the stay stitching, again, I'm watching you guys, and I really want you to make sure that that stay stitching is within that 1/2 inch. When you go over your darts, make sure your darts are facing the correct way, so towards center. So these both should be facing in, like that. And you don't have to backstitch, but you're more than welcome to backstitch if you want. It's just that it's not really holding anything down, so it's not completely necessary to backstitch when you're stay stitching. Same thing on my back pieces, just on the waistline. So you don't have to go around the whole piece. You'd be kind of wasting your effort a little bit if you do. It's not going to hurt anything as long as it's within that seam allowance, but you don't need to. And again, that stay stitching is on the curve, and it's there to hold, hold the shape and keep it that curve stable so that it doesn't stretch out to a shape that we don't want. With the muslin, that's not really as much of a problem usually. But on things like armholes and neck holes and specific materials, it can be a problem. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew our side seams together. So you have your front piece, which is a mirror image symmetrical piece, right? And I'm going to lay this down with the right side up, and then I'm going to lay on top of it my sides, my back pieces rather, and I'm going to make sure that the curved edges, the hip lines, are lined up, and you can double check because there are notches. Those notches need to match up. Make sure you put right sides together, and you can pin where your notches are. I like to pin at the top and then pin wherever notches are, and then anywhere in between where I might be having some problems keeping things together. These curves are the same, so you don't have to really worry too much about pinning a lot, but it's up to you in terms of your comfort level, how many pins you actually want. So that's the one side, and then you're going to do the other side as well. And again, really make sure that you're not putting your straight center back seam on the side seams, because you're going to have to take it out and redo it again. These curves should really line up pretty much exactly, and again, look for your notches. Okay, then we're going to sew these together at a 1/2 inch. Make sure when you're sewing that your garment is out of the way, because if you have it bunched up like this, you'll end up sewing over it. It's going to happen to you a lot of times. It still happens to me now. But if you are if you're aware of where your garment is, and if you keep it off to the left, it'll happen less than it should, and you won't have to rip out your seam and start over. And again, make sure that your garment is staying flat on the one side, and that those raw edges are nice and even. And this could all be pinned again. I'm being quick and lazy here. So again, those steps are, first step is darts, second step is stay stitching, and third step is side seams. And we're going to do the center back later, so don't worry about that back seam. We'll get to it next time. I want you guys to just have this much done for next week. Now if you had pockets or a side zipper for this garment, things would be a little different. So not every skirt is going to be put together exactly the same way, but you'll start to learn the differences in when you need to pay attention to that stuff as you get more advanced. But for this very basic skirt, this is the steps that we would follow. And again, I always like to make sure I trim off all my threads so that everything stays nice and neat. And that's that for the first steps of a skirt, okay?